If you've been on the internet for even a small amount of time, there's no doubt you've fallen down a few rabbit holes. Hell, maybe you've even enjoyed an ice rig video or two. Whether it be on YouTube, X, Instagram, or some web forum, you've likely stumbled upon one, a lot of the time by mistake, often accompanied by some out-of-context image or screen cap, not knowing whatever you're looking at is part of some grander lore. However, not all rabbit holes are created equal. Some are short and may evoke a chuckle or two. Some are mid-sized and may provide some additional insight into a gap of knowledge you've had. And others are extensive, cavernous. Some are plain and in sight, while others aren't so noticeable. Only if you choose to start digging is when the true scope of their depths begin to emerge. Going through these explorations and cataloging this real-life lore tends to be conducted by only the most devoted and brave of internet spelunkers and documentarians. Many do so simply for its own sake. Others may do it to carve a path for future explorers, while some do it to bring a light to an otherwise concealed darkness. Today will be one of those tunnels, a rabbit hole that brought light to an incredibly sinister ring of online extortionists that deal primarily in child exploitation. Even though this ring has been operating for a few years now, it's only recently that their activity has become more widely noticed. Unfortunately, it doesn't end with them. All of those that lie under the umbrella of these extortionists seem to be a cabal of decentralized degenerates and perverts seeking to satiate their disgusting urges. Under them, however, seems to be a deeper chasm, dealing with the vestiges of Cold War clandestine operations, the occult, and accelerationism. The series seeks to brighten the light that's been shone upon this pathology of evil. We'll begin with the man whom inadvertently brought wider attention to all this, a man by the name of Kyle Williams Spitze. Early in the new year of January 2024, this video was re-uploaded by Dying Scribe.
I'm getting ready to blow his goddamn brains out right now.
It showcased Jeffrey Scott West and Kyle Spitze engaging in a drunken confrontation. The man's mother, Melanie Spitze, attempting but failing to quell the situation. Kyle would continue to escalate the ordeal by taunting the man, ending in West taking the shot he had promised. The bullet would only graze Spitz's ear and would end in Melanie screaming at West as Kyle ran outside into the surrounding forested area in an effort to escape any potential further attack. The police would be called and a standoff would ensue between them and West, lasting about a total of 2.5 hours. It would unfortunately end in West taking his own life. Kyle and Melanie would escape mostly unscathed, for the time being. The video Kyle recorded seemed to be originally taken a few months prior in August of the previous year, at least according to the laptop's lock screen seen in the video. It would be a few months later when the recording would go viral, primarily on X, initially being posted by the aforementioned Dying Scribe on January 15th of 2024. Just a bit of an editor's note, Scribe's post was the first one I came across, and I did initially think his post was the first instance of virality, but I believe it went viral alongside another post made by Ragland1836, or Billy Ragland, which has double the numbers of Scribe's post, and was posted a little over an hour before Scribe. However, the information under Dying Scribe's post is a lot more useful, along with a few other tidbits of info regarding the overarching story, many trying to find additional context to what may have led up to the initial confrontation. Some interesting screenshots would be showcased along with the main post. It would be about a day later where the Daily Mail would report on the situation. He would even show up on the Law and Crime Network YouTube channel, where he would be interviewed by Jesse Weber and tell his side of the story a couple days later after the viral tweets.
We are joined right now by Kyle Spitze himself. Kyle, thank you so much for coming on here, and very nice to meet you.
Between the 15th and the 18th, many netizens would begin to dig further into the story. It wouldn't be more than a day later when posts like these would surface, along with many other posts accusing Kyle of grooming children, engaging in revenge/sextortion, and being in possession along with the distribution of CP. Very notably, the accuser, at Baby Teeth Girl, would say he participates in some BS called 764. The same day, at Reddit Lies would post a couple of screen caps showcasing a post made by Reddit user Monty Gatorstan, discussing the grooming and extortion ring predominantly known as 764, posted 8 months prior. The user, in her warning to the reader, would directly name Kyle Spitze, associating him with the pseudonym Criminal, which can be seen in the screen caps posted by @Dying Scribe, of Kyle talking to an unknown party about the shooting. Just a day before Kyle had appeared on the Law and Crime Network, another Reddit post would surface, posted 2 years prior, titled, a long and potentially illegal confession, where user OldRain7463, otherwise known as QB, would tell his tale of how he stumbled into the 764 sextortion ring, listing off the many atrocities he had seen those within the ring commit, the sharing of CP, and the acts of sadistic torture and extortion, using threats of swatting and doxing along with blackmail in order to goat their victims into committing gruesome acts, such as fan signing, i.e. cutting specific letters, numbers, or symbols into one's body, even going as far to getting their victims to kill and fan sign their own pets. It would be a little under a month later, after the initial recording of Kyle's video, where the FBI would post a PSA regarding the 764 sextortionist groups, warning the public at large. This PSA would corroborate both posts made by QB and Monty Gatorstan. A day before Kyle appeared on Law and Crime, Dying Scribe would continue to post updates and revelations regarding Spitze, including screen caps from @BabyTeethGirl and QB's Reddit posts. One other tweet would go viral from @GameNosh, humorously summarizing what had been found. Unfortunately, the greater public eye would turn away from the ordeal, but law enforcement, along with Kyle's victims, would continue to work in the background. Not long after the Daily Mail article and the Law and Crime interview, Kyle would continue his usual activity on Telegram, along with mocking @BabyTeethGirl, as well as taking to his X account to post a handful of times. It wouldn't be much longer when the news of another tragic event would surface. A video of Melanie Spitze, the woman in the viral video, would be found dead, Kyle himself recording the aftermath of whatever may have happened leading up to her death, her body lying next to a blood-soaked bed. He would subsequently upload it to a private Telegram chat, but would be leaked by users within the group, and the video would make its way around X a few days later, many initially believing Melanie was a victim of homicide by Kyle's hands. Users within the Telegram chat saying as such. Telegram user SurgeHiveXA333 would speculate about where the heavy amount of blood could have come from, saying, "For my POV, it looks like he shot or stabbed her." Very notably, he and presumably another user both recounted Kyle claiming to have killed a whore. A couple of days later, after her initial death, on 1/30/2024, Kyle would post a GoFundMe to garner donations from the news of his deceased mother, along with posting the news on Instagram. It would be a couple days after that when the Friendsville, Tennessee PD would confirm her death when inquired by BX on X. The same day, BX would report on another revelation on just how deep Spitze's alleged abuse activity went. She claimed to be in contact with a confidential source, whom shared evidence of Spitze claiming to have groomed 2,600 plus victims, and had hoped to reach 3,000 before getting feted. On February 3rd, Headline USA reported on the news of her death, not long after the video began circulating. They were even able to interview his father, Michael Spitze. He would go on saying that his son spiraled into the clutches of satanic cults 6 years prior, during his and Melanie's divorce, claiming Kyle was groomed into such behavior by an anonymous woman 20 years his senior, a woman he calls Tara. Quote, "He was just turning 18, and that woman convinced him to move to Washington State, and she groomed him and taught him how to do this stuff online," the father said. "I hate her." Michael would claim the death of Melanie was unrelated to his son's involvement with 764, saying her death was a heroin overdose. His conclusion for this theory was the Narcan inhaler that is visible within the recording. As for the blood-soaked sheets, he claimed Melanie had serious liver cirrhosis and that she vomited the blood, saying her autopsy report would vindicate this theory. He was told by detectives that no visible marks were found on her body. However, Michael would refer to his wife's death as a murder, saying Kyle had nothing to do with his wife's murder. Headline would continue with some follow-up questions, asking why he referred to his wife's death in such a way. He would vehemently deny this and further proclaim his son's innocence in his mother's death and his involvement with 764. Even when presented with proof, he continued to proclaim his son's innocence, however shaken in that resolve. Kyle himself was found to be held up in a psychiatric ward.
Hey Skyler, it's Kyle. I just wanted to call you and let you know that I'm in a hospital. Kind of like the psychiatric one, but I just wanted to hear your voice, and yeah. You won't really be able to call back this number. I'll have to call you, but I guess next time I call, if you see something pop up, you'll know it's me. So, back. I still love you.
but would be released not long after. Confirmation of this would come from ex-user Grale, Kyle responding to her slew of messages. Kyle, just like his father, would also proclaim his innocence in regards to his mother's death to other Telegram users, both just after the tragedy and later on, presumably after his release from the psychiatric ward. Later the same month, Melanie's obituary would be made public. Not too long after, Headline USA would report on a follow-up, Knoxville police announcing her death as accidental, saying fatal levels of fentanyl were found in her system, coupled with other comorbidities. Although not mentioned in the article, it may have been the aforementioned liver cirrhosis Michael had stated. The article would go on saying, her death is not believed to be suspicious. There were no signs of external injury or trauma. The next day, the news of Kyle's formal arrest would be published. 7 days later, it was announced that he was formally charged with several counts of child exploitation. According to the Headline USA article, federal agents were able to secure a search warrant on Spitze's phone on February 10th and found an abundance of CSAM and violent content. The contents of one folder labeled Minor Victim 1 was able to help the FBI track down the aforementioned victim. According to the affidavit linked in the article, CART, or Computer Analysis Response Team, were able to use the metadata within one of the recordings to obtain the geolocation data of where MV1 had created the videos. They were subsequently able to track her down and obtain her testimony against Spitze. CART was also able to gain access to Spitze's Telegram chat as he left himself logged in. The affidavit proves without a shadow of a doubt that Kyle William Spitze had operated under the pseudonym Criminal. At the time of this video, only 5 pages of the affidavit have been unsealed. The remaining 28 pages remain redacted until the ongoing investigation concludes. It would be a month later, on March 31st, where Headline USA would report on Spitze's not guilty plea in his charge of distribution of CSAM. Key word is distribution. According to his court indictment, he still faces 3 counts of production of CSAM, 1 count of possession and access with intent to view CSAM, 3 counts of distribution of animal crushing videos, and 1 count of enticement. According to the Headline article, he is yet to be offered a plea deal, and if such a deal is in the works, April 26th of 2024 would be its due date. If no deal is offered, he will stand trial on May 28th of 2024. He has since been moved to federal safe housing in Blount County, Tennessee. Now that you're up to date with the Kyle Spitze story, let's dive into the group he was a part of, the sextortion group known as 764. It's important to know that the term 764 has become an umbrella term. It may have not have started out as that, but since its inception, many different groups have been made and all go under different names and monikers and come from all different regions of the world. However, they all have the same general purpose, primarily lying in the extortion of children. Their reach has become so prolific, Ruben Sim was able to catfish someone on Roblox whom claimed to be a part of Kaskar, one of the groups the FBI directly named in their PSA. This user was showcased in his video, fighting Roblox's gooning crisis. The user would find out about his showcase and reach out to Ruben. The two would have a brief interaction, to which the user would admit his involvement with Kaskar. Ruben would then post this interaction on his X account. Unfortunately, I can't show you this, as Ruben deleted his post regarding the interaction, along with everything else on his Twitter, as he tends to do periodically. Let's start from the beginning. Where did 764 come from? Whom created it? In a recent expose regarding the sextortion networks, answers to those questions were revealed. The now infamous sextortion umbrella term 764 was started by Bradley Cadenhead. Now before I show you his face, I want you to imagine for a second what you think Cadenhead might look like and how old he is. Perhaps someone bearing the likeness of Judge Holden from Blood Meridian, or maybe someone akin to Christopher Paul Neal, otherwise known as Mr. Swirl. Maybe someone in their late 20s or early 30s. Nah, it's this kid, a pudgy ginger who wasn't even 18 years old at the time of his arrest. However dopey this kid looks, he truly is a case of don't judge a book by its cover, especially when his court documents start with this bright, bold pink text warning to parole authorities, stating, "Attention parole authorities. Prior to or upon consideration of this defendant for release on parole, please contact the undersigned district attorney's office at phone number to arrange a review of the video and photographic evidence recovered from the defendant. The evidence depicts child but also includes video and photographic materials reflecting the defendant's interest in, fascination with, and proclivity for infant murder and sexual assault child mutilation, torture, and death, human self-mutilation. The defendant is dangerous. Going through these documents, along with the news articles, paints Cadenhead in a fairly grim light. The kid had discovered hardcore pornography at 8 years old, and developed an interest in more violent, gore-orientated content a mere 2 years later, saying he watched it for the shock value. He continued to consume such content until he was 16 years old. Before his online activities were more widely known, he had popped up on local law enforcement's radar in 2018. His court documents citing various terroristic threats regarding his school, many students and even teachers filing complaints about the boy, saying he wanted to shoot up the school and go home and kill kids, along with comments on creating bombs. He would subsequently be placed under juvenile probation, but would violate his terms not long after and be sentenced to 10 days in juvenile detention. Unfortunately, leading up to his formal arrest a couple of years later, Cadenhead would continue in his online activities with his unfettered internet access, continuing to consume more violent gore and torture-related content. A turning point would come for the boy, as he stated in an interview written on his statement of facts form. According to him, he became acquainted with an unknown party through Minecraft, whom continued to deepen his fascination with such content. According to Wired's expose, Discord's security team had provided research that had showed Cadenhead had learned a variety of extortion and child grooming techniques through a Discord server called Cult. Cult itself being another sextortionist group. Its notoriety became more widely known, at least in law enforcement circles, when Caleb Christopher Merritt was arrested. He had been caught abusing and eventually abducting a 12-year-old girl. He was fortunately caught, and had admitted in his police interview that he was part of the group. He was later sentenced to 350 years in prison, with parole eligibility being at the 33-year mark. Cult itself being a breakout from the comm networks, another umbrella term used to describe a variety of cyber-based criminal activity. I spoke to a guy with his ear pretty close to the ground with regards to these networks, and he was able to clarify it for me. I quote, "Comm as a whole is a giant cesspool comprised of many different groups and offshoots of those groups. This includes 764, Leak Society, Court, 2992, NLM, 7997, etc., to name a few. Some of the groups are just basic chat groups, while others are more focused on certain activities and or ideologies. A few channels deal solely in criminal activities such as selling stolen SIMs, swatting, doxing, and in some cases, there are people who are willing to do cut signs for others at a price. Other chats are full of hateful people looking to harm others, and those chats also contain people who want to be harmed. Kind of a sadomasochistic kind of vibe in my opinion. Some of the darker channels require you to do some kind of crime to get in, which they'll typically use against you if you try to leave. Sort of like gangs, blood in, blood out. From there, Cadenhead created the now infamous 764 Sextortion Ring, claiming the initial server he had ran had hundreds of gore-related content, along with plenty of CSAM-related materials. The same server was able to accumulate between 200 to 400 followers. Why 764? Well, lack of creativity, I guess, as 764 is just the first 3 digits of Stephenville, Texas's zip code, the town in which Cadenhead lived. There really isn't any other significance. Before 764's more prominent reach and graduation into an umbrella term, it seemed to have been a bona fide cult, Cadenhead taking its reins of leadership, many on the server idolizing him as the cult's leader, at least according to the kid himself. Unfortunately, his reign of terror would continue for a couple of years before his arrest in 2021, as Discord had alerted law enforcement of Cadenhead's activity a total of 58 times. Before this, he and other members of the group were able to lure in and victimize many young children, primarily girls. They would lull them into a false sense of security in order to obtain explicit materials from his victims. Once he and the others had those materials, he used them as leverage to get these girls to commit various grotesque acts. From having the girls carve their names onto their bodies, otherwise known as fan signing, all the way to getting their victims to kill their pets. One particularly grotesque event mentioned in the Wired expose is Cadenhead, along with others, goading a girl known as Eve to bite her pet hamster's head off, along with committing various other forms of abuse against the girl. Unfortunately, Cadenhead wouldn't be charged with her abuse, as the Stephenville PD wasn't aware of the incident until the FBI brought it to their attention when asking for the contents of Cadenhead's computer in late 2023. Even though the boy was charged and sentenced because of the CSAM-related content, the interviewing officer in the statement of fact form says Cadenhead didn't seem overly interested in that aspect of the server he had cultivated, and was far more captured by the violent gore and torture content. He just used the CSAM to attract and keep followers within his server. The kid would subsequently be sentenced to 80 years in prison. 80 years? I mean, I think that should be the minimum. But other fairly prolific predators have garnered far less for just as horrific crimes. Sarah Vanden Berg of Beneath the Surface News was able to get a clarifying statement from Lieutenant Jeremy Lehner, one of the officers whom worked on the case. Lehner saying, "To be perfectly honest, the CSAM is probably the least egregious crime he has committed. He's a scary kid. His whole thing is about online manipulation." The evidence presented at the punishment hearing showed that the defendant possessed images of young children not only being sexually abused, but also choked, beaten, suffocated, and grievously injured. The defendant used these images to coerce others into mutilating themselves, including carving his screen name into their bodies and harming animals. Sarah goes on to ask what Cadenhead's reaction to the investigation was. Lehner responded, "He couldn't have cared less." Lehner ending with, "If he had continued access to the internet, I believe he would have continued this behavior." Cadenhead is justly behind bars, but unfortunately his legacy lives on, as 764 has grown far beyond him and has taken on many different pseudonyms and monikers. The depraved sextortion of minors and the creation of snuff films still carrying on every day within the depths of Discord and Telegram. Kyle Spitze being a prime example of this blighted legacy. However, it doesn't end with them, nor their ilk. Cadenhead wasn't the only ground zero within his depraved community. Another user who went by the name Duck, or Gore Butcher, had piqued the FBI's initial interest into this sextortion cabal, otherwise known as Angel Almeida, an equally vile and grotesque predator. Just like Cadenhead, he used manipulation tactics in order to extort minors online. However, he is believed to be responsible for the proliferation of Satanism that now permeates within most of these circles. Not just any Satanism, a certain kind of Satanism. But I'll save that for the next installment. So until then, stay tuned, because it only gets stranger from here. Now get out.